Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Interesting topic to talk about today. I want to take a look at ruminating about conversations that we have with people. So this can be with our friends, with our family members, or with our husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends, whoever, right? Because there are a lot of like fears and compulsions that are associated with the conversations and daily interactions that we have with people. So before I go on, please subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think, and you can also suggest some topics as well for us, and we can take a look at those. So some of the things that we try to do during and even after the conversation are like thinking about how did I come across to that person? Like, was I rude? Was I mean? Was my tone fine? Did my face look very strange? Was I making bad, ugly facial expressions? Were my words matching my face, or were my actual intentions matching my face? And the same that we apply the same thing to the other person as well. How did they come across? Like, what does their face really say? What does their tone say? What does their volume say? Does it match their actions? Does it match their thoughts? Are they telling the truth? Right? And then, like, after the conversation is done, we're trying to recall our own feelings about it, right? What was I feeling during that moment when that person said this? Like, what were the feelings going through me? Or when I said this, what are the potential feelings that would be going through that person? Or so trying to analyze their like feelings, or and trying to then match, okay, what they were saying, do I think that they were feeling that because their face said something different? And we get into this habit of really nitpicking like what happened in the conversation, what didn't happen in the conversation. And so, and plus obviously going through your words, did I use the right words? What did that person mean when they said this? Because this specific word could mean this as well or that as well. This was something vague. I don't know what I feel about this. I'm not sure like what their intention was. I don't know if I chose the right words. Maybe I should have chosen some other words that could have, like, you know. And then what we also do is we rehearse the conversations in our head. Like, we really replay them. And then we try to imagine different scenarios of, okay, if I had said this, would the other person have said this? Or if that person has said this, then what would I have said? Um, Leading up to conversations, we this is a very common compulsion that people rehearse conversations in their head. They rehearse their part, like if there is an important conversation coming up. It can be at work as well, but also in your everyday relationships as well. We rehearse it in our mind. We really try to put in the conversational pieces where it's like I need to have everything in mind that I need to talk about, and we literally rehearse and revise the conversation almost like we are preparing a script, right? And I used to do that. And then because we want to make sure that we are able to touch upon every single point that we want to make in that conversation, and that we say it the right way, the correct way, and we really, convey the message that we want to give. So some of the fears that I want to talk about that go into this, and there are quite a few actually over here. Why do we ruminate about these conversations, right? So obviously it's a fear driven thing that's happening. There's a certain fear that is, or an irrational belief that is behind our need to ruminate and need to dissect and analyze the entire conversation. So what are some of those? Fear of being judged, of course. The first one, which is like I don't want to be I don't want the other person to judge me for what I said or what I brought up or how I reacted in that conversation. I don't want them to think of me in that specific way, like throughout the rest of our relationship now. And again, when I say relationship, this can mean friendship, family relationship, romantic relationship, any even work relationship, any sort, right? So I'm using that term very broadly. So fear of being judged yourself. Then fear of being misunderstood, big one for me. The reason I wanted to analyze conversations and really rehearse them before going into them was because I did not want the other person to misjudge me or misunderstand my words. I wanted to make sure that what was in my mind was conveyed accurately just as it was internally. I wanted to like match my words to that, right? So, and it really, really, really bothered me if I ever felt like the other person had not fully understood me, or maybe I had not conveyed my message perfectly well. And that uncertainty after the conversation had happened would really bother me. So fear of being misunderstood, and that leads to then fear of people then leaving you, perhaps, or fear of people thinking of you in a bad way. People Fear of people rejecting you, fear of people like taking you out of their life as a result of misunderstanding you and misjudging you. So it's not just a fear of being judged, it's also a fear of being misjudged. Big one, right? Then it is a fear of it's also a fear of us disliking them because the reason we try to analyze the conversations is also because we are afraid that what if they said this and I start disliking them as a result of it. And if they meant this, then maybe what if like I don't want to like talk to them after that, right? So we also, because we are deathly afraid of anything, any bad influence coming into the relationship, so we are also afraid of our own feelings of what we might feel about that other person, right? Then there's the fear of the relationship deteriorating, and that can be in any way, right? So the reason we want to look back on the conversation is to make sure that if there are any signs that the relationship is deteriorating, that we pick up on it, and either we can preempt the deterioration and the ending of the relationship, or so that we can immediately fix it, right? So that is a fear that comes up, which is why we really want to like immediately like pick up on what went wrong in that conversation. I need to know what went wrong. Was there something that went wrong? Was there a gap of understanding over there? Fear of mishearing something or fear of being misheard. So again, trying to recall, do I remember exactly what that person said? Did he say this word or did he say that word? Or did he say I can do this or did he say I can't do this? Right? Um, yeah, although I think in a British accent, I'm just thinking right now, if someone says I can do it and I can't do it, maybe it's quite obvious what they said, but in an American accent, perhaps it's not that obvious. So, but yeah, trying to recall the exact words so that you don't misunderstand what they said, or they haven't misunderstood anything you said, right? Because you want to again make sure that they have exactly the message that you want to give them. Fear of being lied to, or fear of being deceived, or fear of being manipulated. So again, this is another thing that comes up, especially these days, with a lot of like talk about red flags in the conversation and whatnot. People are afraid that they're being lied to, or they're being manipulated, or the other person is trying to hide some information from them, or deceive them, or give them like a fake, impression of something, or a false impression of something. So they want to really, really analyze the situation. And on the flip side, interestingly, we also have a fear of being the liar or being the deceiver or the manipulator. So we want to make sure we use the right words, because we don't want to be like, oh no, I don't want to mislead that other person, or I don't want to say something that is like a false representation of reality, or I don't want to say something that gives them like a false, a false narrative or something. So again, trying to make sure you use the right words, you say the right things, you explain and over explain everything in the conversation. um and this goes for like often with romantic relationships. Fear of looking unattractive during the conversation. So when you're conversing with someone, you're also trying to analyze their facial expressions as to if they're looking at me, do they think I'm looking ugly? Is this angle better? Is that angle better? Should I look at them like this, or should I look at them like this? Or should I smile like with my teeth, or should I do a smile without teeth? And then looking back on that interaction and being like, oh, which angle was better? Like, when I was talking to them from this angle, I noticed they weren't looking at me that much. Was it because I was looking ugly? So that comes up. Or if you have a fear of finding your partner unattractive, then you are possibly looking back on the conversation and trying to visually remember the conversation, which angle was better, which angle was not, from which angle did they look really annoying, from which angle did they look unattractive, from which angle was there a double chin on them. These are things that we then pick up on and fixate on. We're like, this is not good, this is not good. And obviously, in all of this, one of the biggest ones is fear of miscommunication, because you don't want the relationship to go haywire in any way. You don't want to be misunderstood, but you also don't want to misunderstand the other person. You don't want to be judged, but you also don't want to judge them. You don't want to dislike them, and you also don't want to be disliked yourself. You don't want to be misheard, but you also don't want to mishear them. So ultimately, it's also a fear of miscommunication. And because anything that is left unclear, or something that is confusing, that is left like in confusion, or anything that is left unresolved or you feel has been left unresolved. And usually, if you are someone who ruminates about conversations and and it's latching onto your relationships, then you probably will always feel like there's something unresolved, because OCD will always make it feel like, oh, there's something to solve, there's something to fix. Maybe there's something you're not looking at. It's kind of like health OCD sufferers who are always like, oh, there's a problem in my body that I need to like get diagnosed immediately. Because if I don't, everything will fall apart. So it's kind of like that. Our OCD sufferers feel like that in their relationships. They feel like until and unless there's nothing to fix all the time, then they're missing out on something simmering under the surface, and if they don't like have a look at it, then it will snowball into something bigger and uglier, and then ultimately destroy the relationship. So you will always be feeling like something is left unclear or unresolved or untalked about. So sit with that feeling, don't try to chase that feeling. And again, so you're afraid of like having unresolved issues in the relationship. So and all of these fears can ultimately come under fear of rejection, fear of losing the relationship as well. They can also be linked to fear of sadness, because a lot of people who are afraid that they will end up sad and depressed also want to really latch onto the relationships in their life, because they think that that's where they derive their happiness from, and if they don't have their relationships and loved ones around them, then they will fall into depression. So again, many fears can be linked into this, and obviously if you really start peeling the layers behind every single person's reasons for ruminating about conversations, you'll find more and more and more things. So what are some of the compulsions, aside from the ones I mentioned like at the very start, about like analyze what parts you analyze in the conversation? What other compulsions that we do, especially after the relationship, no sorry, after the conversation has happened, in terms of rumination, like what are the compulsions that follow a conversation and ruminating about it? So first of all, we ask a lot of follow-up questions, right? We ask a lot of follow-up questions about, hey, so what did you mean about that? Hey, so when I said this, what did you think? Or what do you think I meant? Do you think this is something we need to talk about more? And again, it's like a follow-up conversation about that conversation you were ruminating about, and it's just like, it really yeah, it gets to the head, because it's like, no, I need to make sure that I check all the boxes and I get all the certainty and everything resolved from that previous conversation. Rereading conversations, if it's a WhatsApp chat, then you reread that conversation. Or if it's like, I don't know, an interaction under Instagram comments or something, you read that chat and you're like, oh, what did they say? Like, they made an emoji here, but they said this in caps, they said this like with an exclamation mark. Over analyzing little things in those conversations. So that is something that has to be cut out. Double checking things with other people as well. So let's say if you have mutual friends, or if it's a relationship and you're talking to your friends about it, that, hey, this is a conversation I had with my girlfriend, what do you think that she meant when she said this, right? Things like that. So we double check things with other people, then we show them screenshots of conversations. Hey, this person is saying this, what do you think this means? Do you think they're angry? Do you think that they what does their tone look like, and stuff like that? So we use our friends or family to really double check our information and confirm or deny our fears. Then we can sometimes also surveil their social media activity. So let's say I have a conversation with a friend, and like I'm trying to analyze their tone, their words. Do they seem chirpy? Do they seem happy? Do they seem sad? Do they seem annoyed? And then, not, I mean, not if I used to do this, so that I'm talking from experience. So I would at times also look at their interaction with other people on social media, for example. If they have commented under somebody's picture, or if we are in a common WhatsApp group with other people, so looking at, okay, they're joking with that person but they weren't joking with me, or they are being, like this with the other person but with me they weren't like this. So we compare tones and words and conversations like that, because again, we want to somehow get to the bottom of what we're trying to find. Then the other thing that we also do is that we try to match the relationship dynamic to the conversation that has happened. So let me explain what that means, right? So let's say that there is some issue has come up in a friendship or in a relationship, right? And you have a conversation about it with that other person. Now, in the following day, and you feel like, okay, things are resolved, things are different, and now, we can like leave this conversation and put this issue to rest or something, right? Then in the following days, you are still measuring the temperature of your relationship with that other person, trying to see that, okay, the conversation that we had, has that impacted this relationship dynamic now? Has it improved it? Has it worsened it? Are we on the right track? Or did the thing that the other person said, did the words that the other person say in that conversation, or the ideas that they say in that conversation, are they matching up to their actions in the following days now, right? So we are trying to use the aftermath of that conversation as proof or disproof of the validity of that conversation, right? So we are again in that mode of like analyzing, did they mean it or did they not mean it, or did they or are they acting like this still because they misunderstand what I said. We get into that kind of cycle again. And obviously the most common compulsion is bringing it up again with them after a few days. Hey, that conversation that we had like a few days ago, I just wanted to touch on like this again. Like, what did you mean when you said this? Or I just want to clarify my side. I didn't mean this. I just meant this. And this can even be like a month later, by the way. It doesn't have to be just a few days later, because sometimes that thing is just stuck in our head and we're getting annoyed that we really want to like get it solved. And so we bring it up again. And again, this is something I mentioned in the reassurance and confessing video as well. Also, like we don't always bring up these conversations or ask for reassurance in a frantic, panicky way necessarily. Sometimes we also bring it up in a very like casual, haha, very in a joking way. That, hey, that thing that you said, what do you mean by that? Like, we can be very like jokey about it. And so, because it feels like, oh, I'm not feeling anxious, I'm joking about it, I'm laughing about it, it feels like, oh, this isn't a compulsion. But think about it. What's the purpose of you bringing up that conversation? What's the purpose of you trying to ask that clarification question? What's the purpose of you clarifying it yourself again? Are you trying to get a certain satisfactory feeling out of it? Are you trying to get some relief out of it? Are you trying to get some control or certainty about it? And most likely, often the answer is yes, right? So looking at these fears and slash irrational beliefs, because all the fears that I mentioned, like fear of being judged, fear of the relationship deteriorating, that's an irrational belief that um, I must not be judged, or I must not judge the other person. I must have clear and honest communication. The relationship must not deteriorate based on some unclarified things. I must resolve everything, or we must resolve everything in our relationship that is like going to threaten our relationship in the future. I must not be lied to. I must not lie to the other person. I must not be deceived. I must not be the deceiver. So again, you can not play around, but you can see what all these beliefs and fears are at play, what compulsions we are doing about this. And that's what you need to break down. That is exactly what you need to break down, those fears, because until and unless we don't look at what the beliefs are behind this compulsion of ruminating and those other compulsions of then like asking for clarification and stuff like that, um the behavior will pretty much stay stuck. So get ready to embrace uncertainty, because that's a big part of this. Embracing uncertainty, sitting with uncertainty, not asking those questions, not chasing those answers. So I hope this was helpful. This was a video I had been wanting to do for quite a while, and I'll be around for with more videos very soon.